Hi guys, good morning, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got the BYD Seal on review with us, and not just any BYD Seal, but this is the new Cat A version. So a little bit of a decrease in the power specs, but this car sits comfortably within Cat A COE, so it's gonna be cheaper to purchase up front and it's gonna be cheaper to upkeep as well. But the huge question is, we're all very used to the 3.8 second performance variant of the BYD Seal. Now we have a sort of like a watered down version of the BYD Seal. Is it going to be any good, or is it going to be a bit of a dud? Today's review, we're going to go check out its exterior, show you the interior, and of course take it for a drive, and then I can answer those questions and tell you whether or not it is actually worth the money and worth the effort to look at the BYD Seal in its Cat A configuration. But before we do all that, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're looking to renew your car insurance, we've got some very competitive quotes for you, so check out the link in the description box. If you've already gotten your quote from elsewhere, no problem, just get a quote from us as well. You might be surprised at how competitive our pricing is. And without any further ado, let's get on with the review. So this is the exterior of the BYD Seal in the Cat A configuration. It's essentially the only difference that it has compared to the performance variant is the fact that it has smaller wheels and a different rim design. So in terms of the bumpers, the front fascia, the lights, even the body kits, they are all the same, and it's the same handsome car that you remember it to be. But for those of you who don't know what the BYD Seal actually looks like, and this is your first time looking at the car, I'm just going to do a bit of a walk around. So you've got some very aggressive looking headlights with a bit of a claw design, quite reminiscent of the previous generation of Peugeot cars actually. And then you've got this very nice LED backlit grille. So it's not really a grille, it just gives the illusion of a grille. So very smartly done. And then towards the side, in this current car, the Cat A version, you get 18-inch wheels as standard. But on the performance variants, you get the 19-inch wheels, which are a lot more pretty, of course, a lot more sporty. But I must say, this does give you a little bit more comfort when it comes to just cruising speeds and overall softness of the car. The 18-inch wheels does give you a bit more comfort. But that being said, the 19-inch wheels were not uncomfortable in any way. In fact, they were still one of the most comfortable 19-inch setups we have ever driven. So if you fancy it, feel free to trade out these wheels for better ones or larger ones and a more beautiful rim design. This one looks a bit tame, to be honest. A little bit of a mismatch from the fierce and aggressive outlook of the car. I kind of like the 19-inch ones better. So if I were the owner of a car like that, I would definitely change it out. So at the side, you've got this BYD design fender vent, which is obviously does not do anything because there is no air running through the engine of this car because there is no engine. And then at the side, of course, you've got these pop-out door handles, which are very nice touch. I think very in fashion these days. And then towards the rear, in fact, if you look at the silhouette of the car, it almost looks like a fastback. It almost looks like if you open the boot, the whole glass is gonna lift up. And you know what? I wish BYD had made this car as a liftback because it would make loading of stuff so much easier. But anyway, it's not. So we just have to deal with that. This is the rear of the car, some very aggressive rear diffusers down there. And I'm going to show you the boot now because I've absolutely overloaded it with golf bags. So let's go. So I've got 2.5 golf bags in here. My own golf bag, which is a pretty large one, and then my wife's golf bag, and then I've got my daughter's golf bag as well, which is a tiny one. Now, if you're talking about fitting golf bags into the BYD Seal, this isn't the best car, to be very honest, because with the long clubs, you can't actually fit the whole bag in. You need to take out the long clubs and sort of slot them through the back seat. So a little bit of a faff, I think if you were an avid golfer and you're the kind of person that leaves your golf bag in the car all the time, like myself, then this might be a bit of an issue. But if you're not a golfer, then these 400 liters are going to be very useful because you can see absolutely how many things you can fit in there. Imagine there were no golf bags, you will be able to fit quite a number of things into this car. So pretty cool. And I must say, in terms of the overall package, oh my god, I almost tripped over a stone there. So in terms of the overall package, you got a very sizable cabin, and you got a very good rear seat configuration, and you've got very decent rear boot space, but all in a package that is fairly compact and not overly sized. So, I think this has been a I think the BYD Seal has definitely got to be one of the cars of the year because it's just got everything, doesn't it? It's got the good looks, it's got a decent footprint, and it's got good size, good space utilization. The only thing that is such a huge waste for me personally is the fact that it doesn't carry golf bags very well, but that's probably just a very, very tiny portion of the population. So I'm gonna present this from a fact that, or from the standpoint of somebody who doesn't play golf, and say that boot space is also very competitive. So without any further ado, let's jump into the car. I want to show you what's inside of the car, and show you some of the tricks and bits that you can get out of the infotainment unit. Let's go. Alright guys, welcome to the cabin of the BYD Seal. And obviously this interior is pretty much the same as the one that you get on the performance version, which we reviewed earlier on in the year. But for the benefit of those of you who are not acquainted with the BYD brand, or those of you who don't know what the inside of a BYD Seal looks like, let's go through the interior one more time. So, generally speaking, design is quite flowy. There's not a lot of sharp angles in the interior of this car, and it's got quite a lot of distinct and eye-catching design features. So if you look across the dashboard, generally it does look a little bit busier than your typical Continental car, but none of it is distasteful. I think all of it looks quite nice actually. The highlight of the interior obviously has to be this massive touchscreen display. This is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatible, of course, but at this current juncture, this car doesn't have it in a wireless version. I'm not sure whether or not there will be over-the-air updates that will make it wireless, but for the moment, CarPlay and Android Auto is accessible through a USB cable, which you know, some people kind of like attaching the USB cable anyway because then it charges your phone at the same time. For me, I'm not such a huge fan, but if there are over-the-air updates coming that will make the CarPlay and Android Auto wireless, then I think that's all well and good. In fact, if more of you make more noise, maybe BYD might speed up that over-the-air update, which I think is very good. But aside from that, some novelty features about this huge screen as well. So aside from being your infotainment unit, and aside from being very large and very clear and very pretty, it also has some party tricks up its sleeve. So this screen is actually rotatable, so you get a more portrait format. I don't know what situation you might be in where you will require this. Personally, I prefer it in landscape format just so that the top doesn't obscure my view out the front. But I guess this is a pretty cool party trick for when you bring your colleagues out for lunch and then you can show them. I mean, generally people are quite tickled by this, or they're quite taken by this. Now, infotainment functionality wise, not the most perfect system. There are some menu shortcuts or some items that are a bit deeply embedded inside the infotainment unit that you will need to that you need to access. So not the most efficient one in that sense. But generally speaking, it works well. It's quite quick, no lag, no funny business. And I'm just going to give you one example of that. So for example, this car comes fitted with ventilated seats, which is excellent. Super good feature. I love it. And right now I want to turn it on. So to turn on ventilated seats, what I need to do is I need to go into the climate control functions. I need to click a sub menu, and then I need to click on the vent. So essentially there's a 3-step process. Now, a 3-step process when you are parked and stationary is all well and good, but a 3-step process while you're driving can be a little bit tedious. And then, habitually, what you might do after clicking onto your ventilated seats, you'll probably just press home to get it back into the home screen, yes? And then suddenly, all of a sudden, you feel a little bit colder, or you want to adjust things on your main aircon menu, and you press into your aircon button menu again, and then it's still on the ventilated seats menu, so you have to press the AC button to bring it back to the main screen. So then it's another additional step as well. But aside from that, speaking about air conditioning, I think this car is one of the coolest air conditioning systems that I have seen in a while. So Obviously, it still has traditional aircon vents that blow air out at you, but you can't adjust the vents from, like physically from the vent itself. You have to adjust it through the infotainment unit. And I know what a lot of you are thinking, that this is probably like a little bit of a faff when it comes to adjusting aircon settings. And it's true, if you have to drag your aircon vents down like that. I mean, it's pretty cool. It in a sense, it's like another party trick for you as well, and it's quite fun to kind of, you know, play with these virtual air, I don't know what you call it, air graphics, to point them at you. But while you're driving, this can obviously be a little bit difficult as well. But BYD have very, very cleverly embedded a sort of a preset. So currently now, this is under free movement, so I'm allowed to move the air vent wherever I want. Now, if for some reason I just suddenly don't want any air blowing at me, I just need to click avoid, and then all the air vents just point upwards. So all of a sudden, I don't get any draft, I don't get any breeze. I'm not cold anymore. The other option is that if you want the air to be circulated a little bit more, you don't want the air vent to be directly blowing at your face like all the time, the BYD Seal also comes with a swing mode, which makes the aircon vents like move around like your air conditioning system at home, which is pretty cool, isn't it? I think this is one of the best functions that I've seen in the car in a long time, to be honest. Simple, effective, very, very useful. I can see myself using this swing function on many, many, many occasions, along with the ventilated seat. So in this regard, really, really well done by BYD to have this function that I think a lot of cars do not. And I think having this swing function kind of justifies why BYD have not fitted manually adjustable aircon vents onto the car, because in the market you find a lot of cars these days that install these quirky hidden aircon vents that are adjustable either by a weird little knob hidden somewhere, all in the name of aesthetics, right? But doesn't really have a real functionality to it, other than the fact that your aircon vents are hidden and that you don't have a so to speak ugly looking aircon knob to adjust the vents. But in this case, BYD has actually incorporated smart functions like the avoid function, the swing function, which then really just justify the need for this sort of aircon vents, because you can't have these sort of functions on a manually adjusted aircon vent. So hugely good job done, well job done, good job well done to BYD. Okay, in any case, let's carry on the review. Seats, these are like sports seats, really comfortable seats. They are perforated leather, which is how you get your ventilated seats, and these are some of the most comfortable seats I have ever sat on in any car for a long time as well. I think the last really great seat that we sat on, I don't know, can't really, maybe something like the EQS or something like that, something really luxurious and something really high end. So the point here being that these are some of the most comfortable seats I've sat on in a long time, and this is a car that sits in a really competitive price bracket. So this car doesn't cost you $400,000, it doesn't even cost you $300,000. So for under $200,000, you're getting some really premium features: din audio sound system, really comfortable seats, smart interfaces on your infotainment unit, and of course later when we take you for a drive, I'll show you the real magic of the BYD Seal. But for now, let's jump into the back seat, see how the car feels like from a passenger standpoint, and then after that we'll jump back into the driver's seat and take the car for a drive. Let's go. Alright, so this is the rear of the BYD Seal, and today's angle is a little bit different because I've got all my golf clubs. Like I've basically overloaded the trunk of this car, and I don't really have any space to get in on this side because I've had to utilize the knockdown rear seats. So on the right side is the segment that is 40, so it's 60-40 configuration. I've knocked down to 40. so that some of my longer clubs can come on through. But in any case, this is the rear of the BYD Seal, and as you can see, I've got ample amounts of legroom. Now, this passenger seat is actually set to my wife's preference. So she's not the largest person. She's like, honestly, I don't know how tall she is, but let's just say she is 165 cm tall, which is thereabouts. And this is the amount of legroom that I have in the rear. There's a completely flat floor in the second row, which also means that carrying 3 passengers in the rear is going to be less of an issue as compared to carrying 3 passengers in the rear of a car with a hump or something in the middle. So generally speaking, quite a comfortable car. The roof does kind of slope in a little bit towards the side. So if you're carrying 3 very big people and the side passengers need to have their heads pushed up against the side, then that might be a little bit of a discomfort. Not really an issue. But if you're carrying kids and a helper at the back, perfect. No complaints whatsoever. This is a perfect setup. In fact, I have always been a fan of sedans more so than SUVs, and I've always wondered if, you know, one day I would be able to buy a sedan that can comfortably fit 5 people. And of course, the BYD Seal isn't the only car or the only EV sedan that's able to do this, but it does the job really, really well. And this is of course even with a panoramic roof. So this is not a sunroof, it's a panoramic glass roof. And I must say it does do a very, very good job at keeping the heat out. So even on a terribly hot day, the car doesn't feel too bright and the roof doesn't get too hot, at least from the inside. I'm not sure about the outside, but yeah, that's that. So given this amount of space, now I'm 175 meters tall and I've got this amount of leg room and I got this amount of headroom. And I'm seated pretty upright. So if I take a more slouchy or more relaxed seating position, then I've got even more headroom. And I must say, this is a very comfortable back seat as well. So seating position is great. I don't feel like I'm a little bit elevated. I feel quite nicely tucked into the car. And I've got a good amount of window space that I can look out of. So kids, you know, will generally like this. And you know, there's certain cars in the market, and not to be terribly specific, but for those of you who have ever taken a Grab ride in a Toyota CHR, it's just super claustrophobic in the back. So there is such a thing as having a claustrophobic back seat. But in this car, no. Very nice. For the sleek shape that you get, the view out of the car is actually pretty excellent. So all that said, you got ISO fixed points as well, so pretty family ready. And given the amount of room that you have, assuming you put the car seat on the passenger side, you probably won't have to sacrifice too much of the front passenger's comfort in order to fit in a car seat, even a rearward facing full capsule car seat. So I think in this regard, BYD Seal also passes with very, very good results. Yeah, aircon vents at the back, everything you need. So let's jump back into the driver's seat. I'm very keen to go take the car for a drive and show you what I've been experiencing over the last 3 days, over the last weekend, when I've been driving my family around in the car. I've actually finished like one entire charge cycle, and then yesterday at Great Wall City, I've had to charge the car. So I've driven this car quite an extensive bit over the last few days. So really excited to show you what I like about the car. Let's go. Alright, so back in the driver's seat of the BYD Seal, the Cat A version of course. And we are going to go take the car for a drive. But before we do all that, let's talk about some of the basic specs, because this being Category A COE, obviously this is going to be a little bit different from the other versions that we are familiar with. So to getting started, this is a smaller battery pack, 66.44 kilowatt hours. And this battery pack is good for about 460 kilometers on a single charge, or up to 460, depending on how you drive, of course. If you're very, very gentle with it, I believe you can get something quite close. But over the weekend that I've been driving it, I've been a little bit more spirited in my driving, so to speak. So range is a little bit lower than the 460 that that is on paper, of course. I think if you were to really, if you were to average it out, I think the average user should be able to get at least 400 kilometers on a single charge on a car like that. Aside from that, this runs a single electric motor driving power to the rear wheel, so this car is rear wheel drive, and this car produces about 134 brake horsepower, 310 Newton meters of torque. And here's a surprising bit, because BYD says that this car will go from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds, which sounds like very little on paper, but the 310 Newton meters of torque makes you feel like this car is much quicker than a 10-second car. So that's obviously good for you, or good for the consumer, because you're not paying a lot in terms of road tax, and your battery pack is much smaller as well, so charging fees are going to be less. But at the same time, you don't really get a hugely diminished driving experience when it comes to power in this Cat A version of the BYD Seal. In fact, I think this is probably one of the most enjoyable cars to drive, or that I've tested in the entire year, so to speak. It's been a while since we've driven the 3.8 second performance variant, and I'll be honest, when I was told that I would be taking this Cat A version for a drive, I was a little bit skeptical about how this car was going to perform. Usually cars that have a tuned down power spec don't usually perform too well, but this one really kind of surprised me. I mean, if you look at the figures itself, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised. It's still 310 Newton meters of torque, and for reference here, a typical say a 1.5 liter petrol powered car, entry level car, that will probably be producing somewhere between like 250 Newton meters of torque, thereabout. Like at most it'll be about 250. So 310 is a lot for a car in this sort of Cat A segment. So really impressive figures. And another thing that I found really pleasant about this car is just the way it glides over all the imperfections on your journey, because it's so comfortable. There's so much ease when it comes to driving this car, and the power kicks in a way that feels a little bit naturally aspirated as well. I mean, that's a bit of a weird way to put it, but power doesn't kind of like it's delivered in a rather smooth way. It's not stabby like a lot of cars that you get today. I'm not sure whether that's down to the way the battery is set up, or whether it is the way or just because the car isn't so powerful to begin with. But even if you really kind of step on it, the power is delivered in quite a linear manner, and in that sense it's very easy to drive in a very smooth manner in this car. And I think everybody that has taken a ride in this car over the weekend has commented how absolutely comfortable this car is, and that comfort is also in part due to the fact that insulation in the BYD Seal is actually excellent. So I know what many of you are thinking, Chinese EV, how well insulated can it be? The answer is very. In fact, I was just talking to my wife the other day as we were driving along. We were saying that, is this car any less comfortable than more premium counterparts, for example like a Polestar 3 or BMW i4? Actually, the quick answer is no, it's not less comfortable. In fact, I think it might be even more comfortable, in a slightly different way, I feel. So I think with the premium Continental options, the comfort comes from firmness. So the car at higher speeds doesn't really bounce, so to speak. It's a lot more planted per se, and you just get a lot more rigidity in the car. But in the BYD Seal, especially with this 18-inch wheel spec, the car is a lot more plush. The ride is a lot more plush. It's more comfortable in a very traditional sense. Everything feels soft, everything feels cloud-like, and I think that's really enjoyable if you're driving around town, and especially in Singapore where you've got roads that are like super affected by roadworks all the time. This is a very pleasant setup to have. Up at higher speeds, of course, if you were to go over some undulations, of course the car does give a little bit of bounce because of the softness. But in general, I would say the BYD Seal handles very, very well. And of course, for those of you who remember, some years ago, or at the end of last year or something like that, I can't really remember, but we actually took a bunch of BYD Seals around a custom-made track in Changi Exhibition Centre. We took that for like, we basically went all out with the cars, and the cars performed admirably. And that was some time ago, of course. Like before jumping into this Cat A version, I had kind of forgotten how comfortable the BYD Seal was. But jumping back in, it comes back to me instantly. It's all coming back to me now, just like Celine Dion said. Yeah, it's just such a nice car to drive. We were I played golf yesterday. I mean indoor golf at the simulator, and as we were returning home in the afternoon, it was like my family was just taking a slow drive. My daughter fell asleep in the back. My wife and I were just commenting about how absolutely comfortable this car is. I cannot praise the comfort of this car enough. And if I would be very, very honest, at this price point, just under $200,000 in Singapore right now, and of course by the time you watch this video, the pricing could have changed depending on COE, but at this current juncture, this car has a list price of just under 200,000 Singapore dollars. And if I had $200,000 right now, I'm not sure I could find a better car to buy, just purely from a mechanical and driving dynamic standpoint. A little bit of traffic here. So generally, I think it's not that the car's softness or the car's comfort makes the car handle better, but I just kind of feel like when you're putting the car around a tough corner, or when you're going through corners at a slightly higher speed, the way it soaks up what's on the road does give you a lot more sort of like breathing space or mind space to kind of deal with the corners, because you're not really dealing with like fighting the car over the corners. Everything else is kind of ironed out, and you just need to concentrate on the driving itself. So I think in that sense, it makes the driver feel quite reassured when they are trying to put this car around a more difficult situation. So to kind of summarize everything, supremely comfortable car for its price. In fact, not just for its price, it really punches way, way, way above its weight class in terms of its price point and the amount of comfort that it offers, the amount of insulation. Obviously, traffic's been bad today. I can't really bring you on a faster drive per se. Power-wise, more than adequate. Absolutely adequate. Even if you're driving up to Malaysia and not just using the car in Singapore, the amount of power that the BYD Seal Cat A offers is definitely more than enough for the average Singaporean. In fact, I think if you're jumping over from a naturally aspirated petrol car, I think you're going to feel like this car's like way, 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 way more powerful than your existing ride. So you're definitely not going to feel like this is sluggish in any single way. If there was some downsides to it, as a golfer, I just feel like the boot is just not conducive at all for a golf bag. So if you're a golfer, even putting in one full golf bag can be a bit of a challenge, especially if you have a slightly longer driver. So if you're a golfer, you might have better options for you. But if you're not a golfer, boot size is actually very, very competitive at 400 liters, and the rest of the car does kind of make up for it. Super, super comfortable seats, super, super comfortable ride, and a very, very nice delivery of power. Great handling as well. Now, I cannot praise this car enough. Like I said, if I had $200,000 now, I don't think I could find a better car to buy in terms of value for money, what it offers you, and at a certain price point. But if you have any questions about the BYD Seal, the Cat A version, that you want to know and I didn't cover, please put your comments or your questions down in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And of course, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're looking to renew your car insurance because it's that time of the year, or you're looking to sell your used car for the best price possible, we've got some excellent quotes for you, some of the best in the market. So don't lose out, please. You can get your insurance quotes anywhere else as well. But do remember to click the link in the description box below. Check out our codes as well, because we've got some super competitive codes for you. You might just be surprised at how much cheaper those codes might be. And as usual, you know, if you have enjoyed this video or found it useful in any way, please consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel, because we got more reviews coming out every single week. In fact, right after this review, we've got some pretty exciting lineups of Mercedes-Benzes for you, so do stay tuned. And if not, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.